Hey, Ryan Michael Galloway here with We Don't Need No Stinking Record Company.com, and I'm with my friend and producer Ron Logan. And Ron has just produced a tremendous amount of great stuff out of his kind of minimalist setup here. As you can see, it's not particularly.
Well, if you want to do that and pan around it or something.
Yeah, I'll do that in a minute, I think,
Okay,
when we get to the fancier stuff. But he's well equipped, but he hasn't gone out and spent $20,000 doing this, which is maybe what you'd spend producing a single record if you, couldn't do it in your house. So let's talk a little bit about. Okay, we talked about how to do a standalone setup where you just buy the recorder mixer and how that might be applicable to a band where you're recording a bunch of things at the same time.
Or if you're a single artist, but it's much more effective for more than one person at a time. But also if you're starting out with zero gear, if you're like just a guitar player saying you have a guitar and an amp, then
you started fast.
Yeah, so that gets you up and rolling, the standalone unit. Whereas if you're a keyboard oriented guy, then you might want to duck directly to the computer, since a lot of your sounds and stuff and everything are already.
And we'll talk about how that works in a minute. So so to go with the computer, there's a couple components you need. You need
Program.
the application,
which
is going to be something like Pro Tools or
Cubase, Cakewalk. There's Sonar, Ableton. There's all kinds of programs out there for that.
And we talked before this about that Pro Tools seems to be dominating right now.
It does, and I think even the less expensive versions of it have most of the same features that the more expensive versions do. So if you're starting from scratch and going for a computer, it might be a good idea just to jump right into Pro Tools.
Okay.
If all things being equal, at least that seems to be the standard, and you'll know that, and then from that you can work on any others.
So you got your computer, you got your application, and then you need something as an interface so it talks to, well, you need a microphone, but or more. But then you also need something so that microphone can talk to the computer and the application, and that's some kind of a digital interface.
Yes, and those come into also various sizes and expenses.
It can be one channel, it can be
multiple channels, it can be a PCI board that plugs into the computer, it can be a little standalone box that works with a FireWire.
What's yours?
Mine is a PCI card that actually plugs into the computer, and then it's got 8 outputs, I believe, and 10 inputs, and MIDI also in that card, and that's about I think I spent about $135 on that card.
Is that an upgrade from what we were using
No,
before?
it's the same thing. Yeah.
So we're really pretty much with that one set up to record either a stereo channel or a single channel at a time.
Depending on the and well, with that, depending on the program, I could, if I upgraded the program that I had, I could record up to as many as the program would allow.
Okay.
But since we've always just done on this level, I've been too lazy to go out and spend more money on it. Basically, it's always done. So yeah, I can do one mono or a stereo.
So how do we do that? If you go out and listen to the songs that we've done in here, and you hear really big wall of sound stuff, how do we do that? Well, we do it one layer at a time. We record the drums, or I record them somewhere else and I bring them in. We'll talk about that in a little bit because that got kind of complicated, but it worked. Or I come here and we lay down MIDI drum tracks, which don't require an audio interface. They require a MIDI interface. MIDI is where you can play a keyboard
or drum pads
and trigger something else and change the sounds that those trigger. So we talked a little bit earlier about most of these applications are a mixture of
MIDI and audio.
Yeah, and what does that mean? MIDI of course is what I just talked about being able to trigger different sounds on another box. Like, you might literally see the graph of what's getting triggered when, and have the bass drum triggered at one point and the snare triggered at another, and be able to select those sounds from another box. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, but audio is a different deal in that you're actually recording the sound wave, and in fact I think it does end up as a wave file.
Yeah, it's a wave file when it goes in. Yes.
So
and MIDI is musical information. That's what musical information digital interface.
Right.
And so it can be, you can take the piece of information that says, yes, the signal starts here and ends here, but you can make that be a note, you can make it be a drum, you can make it be anything.
So you might have 5 tracks that you see displayed stacked on top of each other that are bass drum, snare drum, hi-hat, and those kinds of things, and those are MIDI, and you might even record a keyboard doing something MIDI and be able to trigger those sounds outboard of the computer, or some of the plug-in.
Yeah, and there's plugins. You can also play them internally. Yeah.
And couple those up with analog. Well, they end up digital, but you're recording them in an analog fashion through a microphone. Things like vocals, things like guitars. You might plug in a bass, or you might plug might play the bass off a MIDI instrument, just to mean what you want. So it sounds complicated. It's actually relatively easy once you see it displayed. What's a little bit more difficult is figuring out how to do punch-ins and how to affect the sounds and how to change their tones and stuff like that. And we'll get on into some of the stuff that you can hang on this in a minute. But that's the basics, right? The computer, the application, the interface, a microphone, and maybe
a small mixer
MIDI.
of some kind. Well, of course, the interface can take care of that, but yeah, MIDI. That goes back to the whole standalone recorder thing. The standalone recorders can be synced up with computers, but they don't have the MIDI capabilities in them. So that's why if you're a keyboard player and you go on that MIDI road, you might want to start with the computer. But if you're guitar, you've got a band of guitar, bass, and drums, and you want to record them all, it's all audio. It's what you hear. Therefore, those are set up better for that.
Right.
So.
So again, how would we get a massive sound out of something that just only allows us to record a little bit at a time? We'd start with the drums. We'd add maybe keyboards or guitar. We'd add vocals. We'd do maybe background vocals. We have a technique where we like to get either one or two or three of us together and double or triple the background vocals so they sound really full. Then there's some effects boxes, and we'll talk about those in a minute. So that's the start. I'm Ryan Michael Galloway here with Ron Logan. I'm with We Don't Need No Stinking Record Company.com, and you can reach Ron at ronlogan@yahoo.com.